Sweet fancy Moses.
Sweet fancy Moses. Elaine's dancing, obviously very disturbing to not only Seinfeld fans, but as the characters George and Jerry talked about. But there's something else that's really bothering Seinfeld now. He says the country is becoming way too PC. Here's what he had to say recently on ESPN Radio.
I don't play colleges, but I hear a lot of people tell me don't go near colleges. They're so PC. Hey, I'll give you an example. My daughter's 14. My wife says to her, well, you know, in the next couple of years, I think maybe you're going to want to hang around the city more on the weekends so you can see boys. You know what my daughter says? She says, that's sexist.
Isn't that, you know, it's amazing.
That, they just want to use these words. That's racist. That's sexist. That's prejudice. They don't even know what they're talking about.
Yeah, trust me, Seinfeld's not the only comedian complaining here. Chris Rock, John Cleese, even Larry the Cable Guy, fed up with how PC the country becoming here, and certainly we see on college campuses, commencement speakers, a lot of them can't make the cut because the student body doesn't necessarily agree with their politics here. I can do chapter and verse on that. Condoleezza Rice, as an example. Who is some student body to say that she shouldn't be permitted to speak at Rutgers University? Remember that whole fiasco? That was outrageous. All right, Andrew, listen, it's a good thing that certain language that was casual in our day is not casual anymore. But at what cost? Have we become, we talk about race all the time, but we can't have a real honest dialogue about race. Imagine All in the Family playing today, and what Archie Bunker said, it would never make it past the FCC. My question is, where is that line? It's easy for all of us to say things are too PC, but can anybody figure out where the line should be?
I think the line has really gone all the way to the PC crowd. Like, there are very few times where you can straddle that line or cross that line and get away with it. I think comedians might be among the last group who have the ability to do that. I mean, we talk about race and racial issues all the time. It's when I'm hosting the show and we're talking about race, I'm always sweating, first of all, and concerned that I'm going to hit a landmine and say something that I don't mean, but that I just say something that's inappropriate or incorrect, and all of a sudden I'll get Twitter and phone calls and all that sort of thing. Look at the debate we had in East Ramapo earlier.
Oh, every phone calls I've got.
Every allegation, every misstatement, every comment that is focused on the Hasidic community is returned as being anti-Semitic. I mean, it doesn't leave a lot of breathing room for actual
conversation. Have your columns had to change at all?
No. I mean, but it doesn't help.
Tell you if they
I'd love to see the editor tell me if he can't write something.
Well,
Go ahead,
well, it's funny you mentioned that because about 3 weeks ago I wrote a column about defending Andrew Jackson on the $20 bill.
I saw the column. Great bit.
And
who else would still be able to be on our tender? Yeah.
The pompous response to that. This is a guy who was elected president twice in 1830 something, and people transfer their modern sensibilities on historic figures and say, well, this guy, you know, he was practicing genocide against the American Indians. Well, he might have had some tough policies. But I kept trying to tell people they don't listen, right? I kept saying, well, put yourself out in a cabin in the middle of the wilderness in, say, Texas in 1825, and then come back to me and talk about how you love the Native Americans so much because, you know, it's a tough world. And it wasn't, you know, I'm just saying that you cannot, you have to look, you know, you have to look at things from a realistic perspective. But I'll also say that this stuff, when I get attacked on, you know, for not being PC or something, it rolls off you. It has to because after a while the attacks become meaningless. If you're stating something and not in a racist or a you know, a venal.
I hear you. It just, you know, for me, Jessica,
becomes meaningless.
The idea that a college campus, now I'm not a fan of the Iraq War, I wasn't a huge fan of the Bush administration, certainly in how they conducted it and how they went. But the idea that I would have the arrogance to say Condoleezza Rice does not have a right to speak to me, that you don't want to hear any opinions that aren't your own.
It's infuriating, exactly. And it's actually really scary for society because it doesn't do a service to these kids that don't have the first clue of what it is to go out and live in the real world. And not only are you saying that you can't hear someone else's viewpoint, someone that is so accomplished and respected, but then but just to sanitize everything, it's like Joan Rivers used to catch so much crap for that too. It's like, come on. loosen up a little bit, be able to laugh. Like, no one wants to offend anybody on purpose.
Well, the irony
but
is no one's
like,
listening to those commencement speeches anyway.
Right, well, yeah.
I mean,
Matthew McConaughey, I thought he got a lot of press out of it.
But can I ask this question? Is it really about Condoleezza Rice? I know about that situation. Or are the students really saying, we don't want to pay $50,000, $70,000, $100,000 to honor this person that we don't agree? Because it's about the money. It's always about the money. It's not about political correctness.
No. I've heard complaints at so many colleges because the person, there's one element of their bio that they don't agree with.
Right.
Or their politics. They have an R in front of them instead of a D.
Right.
And they're unacceptable. But just to me, the point is, I thought the idea to come back to colleges where this is the 1 4-year window, or in a lot of kids 5 or 6 years, that this is where open debate is supposed to be encouraged. This is where you're supposed to hear different ideas. This is where you're supposed to have spirited fights, intellectual or otherwise. But now you got to have comfort rooms. God forbid someone says anything that you disagree with or whatever. I mean,
I understand the point you're all making. I think you're slightly overreacting.
Yes, we agree.
I really think we agree.
Overreacting, not slightly, overreacting.
Don't we think America is a better place when there's heightened sensitivity to race and sex and other kinds of discrimination? I'm not justifying someone who can't take a joke. I like jokes. I actually believe in speaking very frankly about race. I think it's one of the things we've sort of pushed away, and that's one of the reasons some of this has happened. But overall, I mean, I'd rather have a kid like one of my kids who's incredibly sensitive, and you would say oversensitive. I think oversensitive, but I'm willing to have a dialogue with him. I think that's better for our country, and we've come further along. I can appreciate they've gone too far. Maybe some people have. But let's not get crazy about it.
Seinfeld said one thing. I get yelled in the car ride, drop my kids off every day for things I don't even know anymore what I'm allowed to say. Right. And I like to think pretty evolved on this one. And if I'm crossing the line, oh my God, I shudder to think what some of the older relatives go through.
So I think there's several different issues here. One is you're talking about Condoleezza Rice. Okay, start with the fact she's probably politically correct in almost everything she would say.
You think?
Exactly.
It's
different. They're two different.
Just
right.
protest.
Yeah.
So, and I think that was more driven by the faculty that just didn't like Bush. And
probably so.
Right. It's the liberal professors that are half the problem.
She got it in there. She got it in. All right. I want you to get involved in this conversation. I guarantee you, if you've written a tuition check, you've dealt with this yourself. Head over to Facebook and Twitter and sound off on our question. Have we become too PC in the country, or is that an easy thing to say, but in reality, isn't it better than it was before? Either way, make your opinion heard. All right, coming up next, I'm going to go around the table here to talk about what's on the folks' minds here, and there's a couple interesting updates as well.